Just realized everybody just ate, so if I see any nodding, the catch box might become a different kind of device, so be careful. So, or maybe we'll just hear you snoring through the microphone, one or the other. So you guys are here this afternoon to hear about multi-layered security and how down at Millersville University, down in Lancaster County, down about 2 hours away from here, how we keep the bad guys out. So kind of doing an overview of security and the threat landscape at this point, and then going into the different layers of security layers within your organization. And then I'm gonna just briefly go through each layer and say what we do at the university and what tools we use to do that task. So, a little bit of an agenda. We'll talk about breaches, the layers, the 6 layers, the tools, and then hopefully at the end there'll be plenty of time for questions. Oops. So my name is Todd Echterling. I am the system administrator and the campus IT security specialist down at Millersville University. We're a POSHE school, which stands for Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education. That's 14 state schools that collaborate within the area to form a huger consortium, whether it be for governance or for funding. So that's how we coordinate. Ooh, let's go back there. There we go. I've been there 20 years, and I've been doing these types of talks for about 3 years now. I'm also the advisor to the student cybersecurity team. It's my crack team of students that like to learn more about cybersecurity, tear things apart, build a network, defend it, compete in competitions, and so forth. So if you want more information about that, talk to me later on. Also in my free time over the summer, what that is, I don't know, but I do find time to help show students what computer science and IT is all about at our university by teaching some camps for kids. So if you're in that area and you're looking for something for your children to do, come sign up. I also have my family. They're actually here with us this week. And I've got a wife of 14 years and 2 little boys, one to be 12 next week, and the other is 9. So little terrors running around. So what is a data breach? So what is a data breach? So TechTarget says, a data breach is a confirmed incident in which sensitive, confidential, or otherwise protected data has been accessed and or disclosed in an unauthorized fashion. Data breaches may involve personal health information, personal identifiable information, trade secrets, or intellectual property. Wow, that's kind of a big saying. So basically anything that is vital in our organizations is pretty much falls into this category. So how many of you guys in the last year have suffered some sort of a data breach? 3, 4, okay, awesome. Well, not so awesome. Was it a long mediation to get it remediated? You just nod and I can acknowledge it. Yeah? Yeah? Do you want to go into elaborate a little bit if either one of the 3 of you or 4 of you? Do you want to say anything about your breach?
It's ongoing. Not
On?
breach, but the remediation.
Okay, okay. Lots of records?
Yes.
Wow. Ooh, that's rough. And since it's an ongoing remediation, that makes the process even longer. Yeah, definitely. So we're going to take a look at some breaches that you may or may not have heard of in the news first. We're going to talk about some corporate breaches. So, how many of you guys have seen any of these? So Sears was held accountable for, let's see here, how many records was that? Almost 100,000 people having their credit card information stolen. That's crazy. Delta, if you flied with them, you were possibly attacked with might have gotten a new card. Best Buy was affected by a breach, and they told all their customers on April 5th. Hudson Bay, also known as Saks Fifth Avenue, they were also breached. And Under Armour, their payment information their pay information was not released, but the app is used to track weight loss. So it was MyFitnessPal is what was breached. So that was a big one. Some other ones, Panera Bread, April 2nd, they announced that they were compromised on their website. Nearly 37 million people were affected by that one. Sonic, America's drive-in, right? Go get a burger and a shake. Yeah, well, it affected 3,600 of their locations, okay, with their credit card information. Now, Whole Foods announced in August of last year that they recently received information that they were breached, but it was not in their stores. It was more their tap rooms and table service restaurants. So those were all affected. So since I'm in the education field, this is going to kind of dive into a little bit of education information. So for you guys that have either a school or a university, this kind of pertains to you. I have to admit, though, education does a pretty good job of keeping their information safe. They really do. Whether it's K-12 or higher ed, they do a great job.
Well, we're less attractive target, too.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of information, especially at a research university, that has a lot of information, a lot of research data. Sure. So there's a lot there that can be obtained. So security has been a top priority for the higher education institutions over the last few years. And EDUCAUSE, anybody here a member of EDUCAUSE? Okay, very good. EDUCAUSE has named information security as one of its top issues within the organization, and that the universities that they're members of, or their members, should actually concentrate on. In actuality, a leading industry report states that a number of compromised data records increased by 164% in education, okay, in the first half of 2017. So that's a pretty significant number. So that's huge. I mean, that's a lot of data. Now, in the education data breaches, that one only went up 103%. So you can see how the education people, they're a little bit more on top of things. So can you guys take a guess of maybe which sectors ranked higher than education? Yeah, exactly. Both of those. The healthcare and financial. Those were the two above education, which there's a lot of PII and other information there that people want. So, but universities and schools use their large number of users. That's what really makes them a juicy target, because there's a lot of information there. I mean, look at Penn State. Look how many data records they would have. I mean, down at our university, we have about 8,500 students, and then probably another 1,200 faculty and staff. So, you know, that's still a large record, but that's a lot of people in one database. Okay. So as the bad guys seem to get more sophisticated in their attacks, it continues to be important to establish a good cyber posture. And there's a lot of best practices that we can look at, but we're going to talk about those 6 layers here in a little bit. So it's also good to have good policies in place. Policies are governing what devices you can use, what software is allowed on the network, also policies governing your BYOD. Those are big things to take a look at. And now, let's take a look at maybe what some of the threat looks like. So if we take a look at this map, and all these resources, these maps and information is available at the end of the presentation. So the blue dots on the map represent phishing attacks. Purple dots are other unauthorized breaches or hacks resulting in disclosure of personal data. The yellow ones, they're ransomware. Show of hands of how many ransomwares there have been in the room? Okay, couple, 4 or 5, okay. Interesting. Denial of service attacks. If you go over Millersville, there's probably one there, because we definitely had our share of denial of service attacks. I think most people do. So that's a big one. And then just other incidents resulting in school disruptions and unauthorized disclosure. Those are the red dots. So that's where, you know, our students decide to get in the lab or just try to get into the student information system and so forth, and, you know, change a grade, you know, put them in a different class, something. Just trying to disrupt the educational process is really what they're trying to do. So on this map, there's actually 329 incidences that were reported since January of 2016 in education. These now, once again, only these are the ones that are reported. So there could be a lot more than this, definitely. So let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to zoom in here on the central PA area, or actually the Mid-Atlantic area. And you can definitely see that a lot of it's concentrated in the metropolitan areas. Okay? But if we zoom in again, this is one of the closest ones to this area. And this was this year, and it was over in Commodore, Pennsylvania. Very close. It looks to be maybe an hour or so away from here. So it just says officials in the Purchase Line School District are looking to avoid a repeat of the recent case of theft by deception that targeted the district's emails and approximately 100 of its vendors. So, and you can read all this later on. I'm not going to read it to you. But that one was reported by EdTech Strategies. Okay? So we're going to talk about layered security to see how we can protect ourselves. And this can go for anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be just for education. Could be for the small business person, medium, whatever. But so the term layered security describes a defensive strategy featuring multiple defensive layers that are designed to slow down an attacker. When you think of that saying, what building seems to come to mind? Oh, I'm sorry? The Pentagon? Well, kind of. It kind of looks like this. But it really looks like, yes, exactly, a castle. Yeah. So think about it, our layered security as a castle. Okay? Now, if we take a look, we've got a moat, we've got an outer wall, we've got some areas, some slits for the arrows to be shot out at people. Granted, we're not going to do that with the hackers. We could probably get in more trouble. But the drawbridge would almost be like your firewall. So this is what we're talking about. So looking at layered security kind of looks like a castle. That's exactly right. So now we have to figure out how we go from medieval to cyber. And there's some correlations, believe it or not. It's kind of interesting. So keys to an effective security posture is to have multiple tools using different techniques to block the attacks. And definitely make sure that if there is something going on your network, that you're being alerted to it in some way or another. Provide reporting and analysis for follow-up, because you know darn well that once an event happens, you're going to get some interest from your C-level suite people that we're going to know, well, what happened? Because you know that's what they're going to know. How it happened, why it happened, and what are we going to do to fix it. Okay? And then lastly, remediate the vulnerabilities that allowed the hostile activity to take place. Okay? So we have to not just put a Band-Aid on it, which most people try to do. We actually have to make sure we go through, find the hole that was vulnerable, and whether it be a third-party piece of software or an internal piece of software or just a configuration problem, we need to make sure we make that's plugged up and remediated. Okay? All right, so we're going to take a look at 6 layers of cybersecurity. All right? So we're going to go all the way from data, application, to the host, to the network, to the physical, and then we're going to take a look at some policies and procedures and awareness. We're going to start with data security. You will respect my data authority, right? Good old Cartman. All right, so there's 2 sides to data security. The first one is prevention, making sure the proper people can access their proper resources for their job. Okay? So making sure that, say, a secretary works in one department, but then all of a sudden moves to another one. She doesn't necessarily need the same access to files or to resources that she did when she was with the previous department that she might from the other one. Now, detection, making sure people abusing their access are flagged before something bad happens. All right? So we want to make sure that we have tools in place that we're watching or monitoring what files are being accessed. Now, there are things out there called identity and access management, and it's a framework of business processes that facilitates the management of electronic or digital identities. So the framework includes an organizational policy for managing digital identity as well as the technologies needed to support the identity management. That's a lot of words, I understand. So let's break it down a little bit. So the goal of identity management is to do the following. It should capture and record user login information, which a lot of that is done by our Active Directory, right? So we can see that in the Active Directory logs. In Linux, we can definitely get that information, and on a Mac, we can get that information as well. We want to make sure that we manage enterprise database of identities, which we're doing with some sort of a directory of some sort. I know there's been talk around here this week about having users just with local accounts on the machine, but that's not necessarily always a good practice. Definitely, especially with admin privileges on those accounts. That's definitely not a good practice. And then we want to manage assignment and removal of those privileges. Like I just stated, if that secretary moves from one department to another, you want to make sure you remove the privileges or the access that they have to the previous resources. Okay? Let's see here. Another way to assist in identity management is using a single sign-on or federated identities. So that's a way of, single sign-on. So one way to do that is with Office 365. You can do that so you log in once and it gives you access to a whole bunch of different resources. And there's many other ways that we'll talk about down below when we talk about the other layers. And using multi-factor definitely will keep things doubly secure. All right. So now, the problem with with applications is who knows what they really do. How many, show of hands, how many of you guys actually do in-house application development? Okay, there's a couple, maybe 5 or 6. So and hopefully there's some sort of code review that you guys do in place in your organizations. So let's move along here with that one. I thought that one was kind of funny. Anyway. All right, so with application security, there's 3 types of apps that we're concerned about. So the in-house or custom apps, okay? The third-party apps that IT provides, okay? So that's like our Office 365, our Adobe suite that needs updated about 17 times a week. Hopefully because of code reviews and they find problems. And there's also those third-party apps that IT doesn't provide, but people use anyway. Spotify, PrintCap, whatever it might be, right? So these are the applications that they're installing without your knowledge or permission. Once again, if you take administrative privileges away, they can't necessarily do that. All right. So ways to find application vulnerabilities. You can do a penetration test. That's where you either do it yourself using a tool, any number of tools, which we'll talk about some of those down below. And, or you can use, with penetration testing, you can also use it not only for the applications, but it can also be used for your network as well, on hosts, and not only just applications. Now, you can use internal test using an in-house tools for the people. Now, this is the one where it gets a little strange because people don't necessarily want you messing with their workflow with the development process. So they want to just be able to keep hacking away at their code, making the proper changes to the application, and not worry about the security on the other side. Where in actuality, you need to be concerned about that. So using tools to make sure to mitigate that would be great. Hiring a firm to perform a test according to a statement of work that has been agreed upon. So you can bring somebody in and do a gap analysis, taking a look at all of your resources, whether it not only be the physical network or physical access, the actual network itself, the applications, they'll take a look at everything. But you have to make sure that when you do this, make sure that the statement of work includes everything that you want to have happen. Because if you don't, they're going to come back and say, well, you didn't want us to do that, so we're not going to do it. So that's not going to get you where you need to be. And then one thing that some of the bigger tech companies are doing now is public crowd hunting, or bug hunting. Crowd hunting, whatever. So this is where you actually can get the public out there to look for bugs in your software. And you offer a bounty, and this has actually been quite successful. According to HackerOne, 77% of the bug bounty programs uncover vulnerabilities within 24 hours. Now, understand that's for maybe something that you're eventually going to release to the public. Not necessarily a good thing for your in-house application, depending on what your in-house application does. Okay, so it's definitely important to vet your testers thoroughly, because there's been instances where you don't want these script kiddies or some kids just coming in and looking at your code and saying, ooh, there you have a bug there, and they want their money. No, it doesn't work that way. So you got to make sure that you're working with the proper people with these bug hunting bounties. So let's continue. So vulnerability scanners. These can be used to tighten up an application security by uncovering common issues. And this could be something, it could be like looking for bugs in, like, say, Apache or an open source piece of software. That's what a lot of the vulnerability scanners will look for. It warns of problems, but IT has to know how to understand the results and understand the source of the problem to be able to remediate that. Most of all, they need to know how to remediate the problems uncovered. That's the big thing. So some good code analysis tools. Tools to evaluate the code without running it. That's a good one. And it's almost like it's a security spell check that when you're running your code through these tools. There are some inexpensive fail-safe against common developer mistakes and to help improve the app quality. And tools can be noisy, and that kind of what makes people not want to use them in their development process. All right, so let's look at the host. So you guys most likely have, of course, you have an office that consists of a lot of desktops and laptops that are hardwired to the network, and the employees need access to emails, and once the doors are open for the night, anyway. So no. This is not the world that we live in, okay? We have people out in the field. We have people around our campuses. They're in remote offices. Who knows? They could be sitting on the beach and doing their work. That'd be a great opportunity, but we all know that the host or the endpoint is really where everything occurs. So we got to make sure that we protect that. Good old Haley Joe, right? Cyber risks everywhere. So what is a harmful executable? So a harmful executable could be, a virus or even malware that can be called on a machine. And I'm sure many of you guys have actually had instances of malware and viruses on your machines, especially if it runs that Windows stuff, because they're a little bit more susceptible to that than our good old Macs, right? So let's take a look at some host security information. So you need to protect from the harmful executable applications from running and doing the damage, right? So why don't we want users running harmful things? Well, because there's some good reasons. These applications could be harmful in a way that they could steal, or they can encrypt, or even destroy data on your actual devices or on network shares. They can render a machine unusable. I mean, there's been many times, like I'm sure some of you guys that have had ransomware, I mean, you had to probably go back and rebuild those machines, and because it made it unusable. Hopefully there was a backup that you could just restore from and just keep on going with the business. Creating entry points for the bad guys. So a lot of these viruses or even malware, they're creating backdoors or phone home instances where, you think you might have removed it, but in actuality, they're still phoning home in the background and maybe having a backdoor. So, things we can do to mitigate host issues. Encrypt data on mobile devices. Show of hands, how many people are encrypting data on your enterprise devices? Okay. It's probably about 10 people. I was really hoping a lot more hands would go up on that, but I have to admit, we're even deficient at that one here at Millersville. But we are working towards that. But encrypting the hard drives is one way. Automatically backing up local data. So, if these mobile devices, decent way to do it is use one of the cloud-based backup solutions or something to be able to back up and store your information. That way, if something was to happen to the machine, you could always come back and restore and go continue the daily business. Control what applications can be installed and executed. Okay, so a lot of us, especially for our Macs and maybe some people for their Windows machines, are doing some sort of a mobile device management, right? So you're actually pushing and controlling what applications can be used on either an iOS or a Mac, and even to some extent with some of these other utilities, you can even do that on a Windows machine as well. So that's another way you can control the host. Make sure you're doing your application and OS patching. On the side, I moonlight at one of the local Apple retail store in our area, and there's many people that come in with outdated machines, and you ask them, why haven't you updated? Because I like the way it runs right now. But do you realize by not updating, you're opening yourself to vulnerabilities, to security risks, to even being able to, lose your data? So, and they're like, really? And I'm like, all right, let's just update your machine and be done. So, make sure you're doing those patches. I mean, every week or every quarter at the university, we're doing Linux and Windows patching. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get further down. Okay. Scanning of files with an antivirus or anti-malware tools. Okay. Symantec, all these antiviruses, Carbon Black. There's a lot. There's a whole bunch of them. We all know those titles out there. But many have claimed that the antivirus is dead. The classic antivirus that we use is pretty much dead in the water. Because really what they're using is they're using a signature-based model rather than just an analysis of what, or math model. Some of the newer ones are using a math model to be able to detect your malware and your viruses on your devices. And so that's kind of the next-gen antivirus. But with the given of the rise of the new breed of antivirus, the big thing is sandboxing. So where, like, if the application or the agent sees something malicious or something going on the device, it takes that application, sends it to a network sandbox, and kind of then that device explodes it to see what was really going on with the application rather than on your machine, which that's a decent way to do it. It can definitely be useful, but malware is also written to detect these types of infrastructure technologies that we're using. So let's take a look at network security. Okay, so there are many devices that allow us to protect our networks, like firewalls, IPSs, which is an intrusion prevention system, or an IDS, which is an intrusion detection system. And the goal here is to detect or prevent malicious network traffic. That's what we're trying to do. And these tools come in many forms, such as hardware devices. Of course, we have hardware firewalls and virtual appliances. And there's just software that we can. There goes my iPad. We'll get that here in a second. You might have to come around. Sorry. So, yeah, I thought I could too. Thank you, Jamie.
Yep.
Perfect. Or even software, because we have a built-in software firewall on our Macs. We have one on our Windows machines, and there's also software firewalls that we can run on our Linux machines. So there's lots of different versions of these software that we can run. Firewalls. So in the early days of firewalls, the only part of a packet that was really inspected was the header, which the header told it where to go and what to do. But then it's really what we need to do is we need to start looking at the data of the packets. Okay? So they do some deep packet inspection that looks not only at the headers, but the entire packet. And then we can also do rule-based analysis. Oh, let me go back here a second. So this is like basically like you, when you get the airline, you check in with the desk clerk, and he checks your ID. And if the ID looks good, he lets you on the plane. Okay, that's the original form of a firewall. Doesn't pat you down, doesn't do a search. There was no TSA or nothing like that at that point. So it just basically took a look at you and said, okay, yep, you're supposed to be on this plane, get on. Okay, so they're not necessarily looking too deeply. So with the IPS, it's kind of an inverse of the firewall. It looks for reasons to deny traffic, unlike a firewall looking to let traffic pass. And it always looks at the headers and the payload of the packet, is with the IPS. You deploy an IPS where it will see as much unencrypted traffic as possible. So usually you see an IPS or an IDS along with your firewall. It seems to be all in one device, is what it seems to be. At least in our devices it is. But unfortunately, some IPSs use signature-based, and once again, we have already talked about this, where signature-based is not the way to protect your network. Okay? So to continue kind of that airline thing, the IPS is kind of like airport security at this point. These are the ones that are actually going to dig in a little deeper and make sure that your ID looks okay. He's going to make you empty your pockets and go through the metal detector and going to look a little bit deeper to make sure that you're supposed to be on this plane and that you're safe to be on this plane. Okay, so then we take a look at the intrusion detection. So IDS was used before IPSs. IDS gives visibility into the traffic on your network. It will report on malicious traffic, but not take action. It's just purely telling you, you might want to take a look at that, and then move along. It can inspect traffic from anywhere on your network, allowing security people to spot things like restricted applications that might violate policies, see traffic patterns that point to malware or even viruses, keyloggers. It could even see things like all of a sudden, you're logging in, usually logging in on campus, but like 10 seconds later, you're logging in from China. Probably not the right thing happening on your network. And so this is, and it could also possibly see data being stolen across the network. So VPNs, virtual private networks. So this is where you can actually be anywhere in the world, but still make it look like you're coming from your own network, connecting back. And definitely uses keys to make sure that all the information is being encrypted. It uses a software client on your devices, and it makes your remote computer part of your physical network back at the company or the campus. This definitely does a good job of mitigating man-in-the-middle attacks, as well as network sniffing and eavesdropping. And there are places that only allow you to connect back to your organization with a VPN connection and no other way. All right, physical security. The best way to do physical security, lock the dang door, right? But then really can't do much business depending on who you are. Now, honestly, I'm not going to spend too much time on this topic just because it doesn't fall in my jurisdiction at the university. So I can only do kind of talk about the things that we're responsible for in IT as far as physical security goes. So, so physical security is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about the locks on the buildings, mean-looking guards, at the front door, cameras, the alarm system. I mean, it's pretty much anything. I mean, it could even be down to concrete bolsters that protect your front door. So it's all the physical stuff that we're talking about. It also refers to fire suppression systems in disaster recovery. Okay, like we recently built a new data center within our building, and we had to make sure that it followed all the data center guidelines for the fire suppression and shutting down the electricity if something were to happen, cutting the ventilation so that the chemicals can't escape the room. It had to be sealed and it was crazy what we had to do to make sure to certify our data center so that in case of an emergency, nothing would happen. But not only, so those are for on-premise, but how many of you guys that have hosted data centers somewhere, have you ever thought about the physical security of those buildings? Probably not. So, you might want to contact your provider and say, how are you protecting my data? How is your data center being protected? Because once again, unless they're taking liability if something were to happen in their building, then it comes back to you. So you got to make sure that you know who's responsible for the data if something were to happen in that hosted data center. Make sure only authorized people have access to what they need access to. We just did a audit of everybody that had access to our building. And there were people there that had retired 10, 15 years ago that still had card swipe access to our building. And we're like, why are these people still on this list? So, of course, they got cut out, and we immediately removed all student access and then started rebuilding that database from the ground up, just pulling everybody out and looking at who needs access to what door. So, you got to make sure that you have the right people where they need to be and when they want to be. Video surveillance from all angles. This is a big one. And I know in our data center we do not have video surveillance. So now you guys run down to Millersville, get in. No, I'm kidding. So we do not have video surveillance, but if you have a hosted site, they probably do. I would hope they do, so that from all angles they can see from different doors to see if there's people trying to gain access to those hosted facilities. Server racks that have different keys on their locks. How many people have data centers or racks that it's the same key for everything? How many people actually lock their servers from the face panels? Yeah, some people do. Most people don't. Okay? Same with the server racks. You could be in a hosted facility where every key opens up every rack. That's probably not a good thing. So just some things to think about. All right, policies and procedures and awareness. You don't have a business continuity plan, you say? I, too, like to live dangerously. All right. So this is probably the part that bores everybody to death. Trying to write the policies. Taking the security awareness classes. This is the part that people don't like. But this is your primary, if it weren't for the users of our devices, we would have a secure network, right? In some cases, yes, because they're the ones that are using the device, clicking on links in the email, opening up and saying, oh, look, a $100 Amazon gift card for me? No, don't click on that link. No. Break out the ruler and slap their knuckles. Anyway, primary defense at the human layer is education and testing. Show of hands, how many of you guys actually do a testing, security awareness training for your employees? Okay. More people on that one than anyone this afternoon. That's great. Then how many of you guys, after the training, actually take action and do testing on that? Okay. a little bit, yeah.
There's a test at the end of the...
Yeah, yes. There is testing at the end of the classes.
I don't know if that counts.
Sure, yeah, definitely. So people have to be educated on how to avoid social engineering attempts, like suspicious websites, rogue Wi-Fis, etc. I don't know. We've all joined the network here. How do we know it is what we say it is? Really? Right? Yeah, it says AT&T. But there's tools out there that you can capture a login screen from anything and pop it up as your portal. You guys will never join another Wi-Fi again. Yeah, you will. So, but it's just something that's another thing to think about. Social engineering continues to be one of the biggest threats. And it's not necessarily just with our level of employees. It's also with the C-suite, because there's spear phishing. There's even higher attempts to to get data from the uppity-ups in our organizations, right? The presidential levels. There was a situation where a company, they got an email. It looked exactly like it came from their controller. The controller sent a message to their fiscal person and said, "We need to transfer this amount of money to this immediately." And the CFO approved it, and they said, well, the next week they said, well, we didn't send you that email. So they just transferred or sent money to somebody that they had no idea, just because they didn't check the email well enough. So you have to be careful. And, user is a 4-letter word. All right. Social engineering. The goal of social engineering attack is to trick employees into doing something that they will compromise their personal or employee security. People are inherently trusting. We all want to trust, right? We want to give people the benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to our employees and our organizations, we really need to step back and make sure we're doing the right thing. It will take more than 15 minutes a year to counteract human nature. We don't train our people well enough, and we don't have access to their time to be able to sit down and say, okay, this month we're going to talk about this. We don't have time for that because we want to continue to be able to do business. We have to continue to do business, right? All right, so ransomware education. This all goes along with the social engineering. And so ransomware, quickly becoming one of the biggest cyber threats is ransomware. Ransomware can be delivered via phishing emails, malicious websites, or even an application that they might have downloaded, okay? So an effective security awareness program needs to be ongoing and integrated into the employee's normal work schedule or normal work routine. It includes behavior testing, like mock phishing attacks and other simulations that force people to practice what they've learned. Also, effective policies and procedures can help protect the network by limiting what can and cannot be connected to the network. So that's another big one. So I'm going to show you this video. It's one of my favorite ones. I don't know. Hopefully you haven't seen this one. This is something that Jimmy Kimmel did on the streets of LA, just working with social engineering.
We've been hearing a lot about cybersecurity lately, largely because of what happened to Sony. Companies and individuals are more concerned about the safety and privacy of their information than ever. President Obama has unveiled a number of new proposals this week to crack down on hackers, and he plans to address this in the State of the Union speech on Tuesday. And it's great that the government is working on this, but the truth of the matter is we need to do a better job of protecting ourselves. The most popular password in the United States is password 123. And as long as that's the case, we're vulnerable. So today we sent a camera out on the Hollywood Boulevard to help people by asking them to tell us their password. And this is how that went.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon.
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where did you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School.
Oh, when did you graduate?
In 2009.
Oh, great.
Yep.
My cat's name and then just a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1?
Like my birthday.
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th. 95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6/12/95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to get my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Gemma. 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, so like
What's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password.
Well, the important thing is they learned a terrible lesson. I am.
So as you can see, people are very trusting. How about it? I mean, would you guys walk up and talk to somebody with a microphone and start talking about your passwords? I hope not. So, all right. So now the rest of the presentation, we're actually going to take, and I'm going to drill down into each level, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how we defend from the bad guys down at Millersville University. So we're going to start with data security, and mostly it's a manual process. With Microsoft tools, we do a lot of like log analysis and looking at access of different data on crucial file shares. We also use Active Directory users and computers to control who has access to different shares. And we also use Forefront Information Manager. If you haven't heard about that, it basically allows you, it's a good middleware because we can take information from our Banner student information system, and it can actually then import information from the Banner system directly into Active Directory. So we can populate first name, last name, email address, all that stuff. It can sync that information. We currently still have 2 domains in our infrastructure. We're trying to get rid of one of them and just move to one. And we used to have to sync between that as well. But we also use Forefront to sync with the Poshy system because that's where our SAP and our self-service portal for employees is located. And it's all, the logins work across the whole board. So we use Forefront to kind of get that information to Poshy. We also use 2 products from Manage Engine. We use Self-Service Portal, or the Self-Service Plus, that's our password reset portal. And then we also use that for the initial account setup for any new student or new employee. And we also use AD Manager on the back end to be able to do reports, running reports about how many people haven't changed their password in X number of days. And it's a pretty robust package to be able to get information out of the Active Directory that's not built in natively into Active Directory. I clicked. Okay. Did I lose connection? So we'll use this device instead. All right. So in application security, we use a product called Insight VM by Rapid7. And formerly that was the Nexpose product for doing vulnerabilities. And we're using that not only on the application side, but on the host side as well to check for vulnerabilities inside our different operating systems that we use in our infrastructure. We do use anywhere from Windows Server 2012 R2 all the way, and we're just now starting to migrate some servers to 2016. So we're trying to keep ahead of the curve. We also have Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and we just subscribe to satellite so that we can do ongoing updates of our Linux machines directly through satellite. Now, we also do weekly scans of the Windows network and the Linux network using Nexpose, Insight VM. And then those lists are sent to all the critical individuals within the IT organization. And they go through and see what can be remediated and what cannot. And then anything that we need to, what we call whitelist, we actually have to take back to leadership to make sure that they want to whitelist that, or if they want them to still be able to try to be remediated. So it's kind of a 3-step process. Right now we're also working with a vendor to do a gap analysis / penetration test, where they're actually going to come in-house, look at our policies, actually put some devices on the network to see what can and cannot be accessed. or that might be vulnerable that we're not seeing. And they're also going to do an outside pen test of our network as well. So they're going to, we know that we're probably deficient in a lot of ways, and hopefully this will be an enlightening exercise to make sure that the C-level knows that something's going on. Can we get the chat box back to the corner back there?
Whether this is on.
Yeah, it's on. I hear
It's
it.
on? All right. We did a penetration test recently at our school. And one of the things that we really needed to distinguish, and I'm curious as to which way you're going with this, is in one case, they came in, they put something on the network. We gave them access to our devices, and they scanned the devices at that point. They weren't doing kind of like a brute force attempt, meaning trying to figure out the passwords and going in that direction. So while it was penetration testing, it wasn't, I guess, I don't know whether that's, you differentiate that by intrusion, because they're not actually trying to hack you at that point.
Correct,
They're
yes.
just simply looking at all of your systems and determining the weaknesses.
And that's where we're going.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
because that was, we didn't, it would have been interesting to see if they could have gotten in,
Yeah.
you know, but it was that was at a different level, and I was just curious as to where you were going.
Yeah,
with
that's
that.
the way we're going as well.
Okay.
Now, as far in our application development side, we are not currently using any source code review tools. I have made some recommendations to that team, and they're thinking about implementing some tools. That's probably down the line. It's nothing urgent. It's not on their urgent radar at this point, because a lot of our applications are third party, and the code review should be coming down the pike from those organizations rather than us. A lot of our writing is mostly reports or some slight middleware between applications. So we don't have any large applications that currently need large review. Host security. We employ a couple different things here. Symantec antivirus is what's used on all the endpoints. Currently, we're currently looking at an alternative to Symantec. Symantec, in my opinion, doesn't do a good job, or as good of a job as I would like to see in our organization. It is on all of our desktops, laptops, servers, and that's about it. And on our Mac side, we don't use an antivirus, of course. It is centrally managed in our data center, so we can push out updates. We can log in and see, if somebody's actually does have a virus, if anything was quarantined from people. So we can do that all remotely instead of having to log into each machine to see what was detected. Okay. Oh, and if we do get reports of a machine acting badly on the network, we do send some students out to do some malware bites, hijack this, just to see what might be running on the machines. And if it's something that we can't easily remediate, we bring it back and just do a quick rebuild, and then put because most of their information should be on a file share anyway. So just reconnecting to the file shares, and they're good. Endpoint management. On the Windows hosts, we are using the System Center Configuration Manager to be able to push out operating systems and also software to every machine on campus in the Windows side of the house. And we're also using a Windows Server Update Server, WSUS, to update all of our server infrastructure. We are using Ninite on our desktop computers, centrally managed, where we can say, click on, you go to a website basically, and actually you log into the management console, you select packages that have already been built or that can be downloaded, and then when you hit the download button, it automatically downloads a package of whatever you've chosen, and you'd have to go through and see what applications are in there, but it's really awesome because then Ninite takes care of updating all these little packages of software. We don't have to go out and do these updates. It takes care of it for us, which is awesome. We love that package. And then Active Directory for users and computers. We do that to do, we can lock down who can log into what machines using group policy and depending on what group membership they're in. So we can take care of that. We do have a large VDI infrastructure, virtual desktop implementation on campus. At any one point, there's either 250 to 300 people logged in to a thin client or a virtual Windows machine, whether it be from their Mac or from their Linux or from another Windows machine. They can have access to the VMware infrastructure and the VDI network. On the macOS side, I am using Jamf Pro to manage all of my iOS devices and my Macs. Currently working like everybody else is to figure out all the new implications of all the new security stuff that Apple's pushing upon us. But on all the iOS devices, we are pushing a handful of apps, and then we do have self-service set up for all the business critical apps that we feel that the university people might need. So then, because we do allow them to log in with their own personal Apple IDs on the iPads, so that if they want to download whatever app they had on their phone or whatever, they can. But then with Jamf Pro, if they do decide to leave the university, I do have access to that. I can wipe the device and unlock it so that it's not associated with their Apple ID anymore, and so forth. Just like we can also with Jamf Pro, if somebody loses it, I can remotely wipe it as soon as it comes back online. So to help protect any information. On the Mac side of the house, we are using Jamf as well. Once again, we're using self-service mostly. We push it down a couple apps right off the bat. Mostly, we install Office right off the bat, and then we also install the Adobe Creative Cloud application. So then that way, the people that have access to it, they just log in with their university credentials, and they can download whatever Adobe software they want. So that's a nice aspect of that. And another application that I push down on the security side of things is, and we're going to start doing this on the Windows side very shortly, hopefully by the end of the summer, is we use Cisco Umbrella at the DNS level to protect our devices. So there is an agent that you can install on devices, on mobile devices, whether it be a laptop, even an iPad and an iPhone, that no matter where they are, it still uses our Cisco DNS service, Umbrella, to protect them when they're on the road, so which is awesome. So that helps. All right. On the network security side, we do have a FortiGate. We have a pair of FortiGate firewalls, 6800 firewalls. We currently use the Cisco ICE, or Identity Services Engine, to do Wi-Fi authentication. We are trying to move toward Radius a little bit more and trying to do, we're going to implement hopefully EduRoam here real soon so that we can roam from university to university. We also use the Impulse Secure Connect, that we use that in our residence halls for students to be able to self-register their devices, as well as their gaming devices and their tablets and so forth, so that our help desk does not have to do it. They can do everything self-register. And then that their reservation stays in the system for basically 4 months, because it's the time that they're at the university. I should have updated this slide because we currently have removed our Exinda Network Orchestrator off the network. We decided to go a different route with that one, but we were using that one for some packet shaping or traffic shaping to give priority to certain applications rather than others. We are using a Blue Cat IPAM, IP management solution. That's our DHCP server for both on campus and in our residence halls, so that when the students plug in, they automatically get an IP address. Or for like our faculty and staff laptops, we do a reservation in DHCP so that they always get the same IP address whenever they plug in, if they need that. As I said, we're using Cisco Umbrella, and we have a Barracuda spam firewall that we use to protect our email. Also, we're investigating, like I said, encrypting laptops for keeping data secure. We're also looking at one of those next-gen antiviruses. We've looked at a couple of them, but the big one that's on the plate right now is we're looking at a SIM so that we can correlate all the events into one location. So basically aggregating all of our logs into one box and then being able to have the device say, oh, look, Todd just logged in like in Millersville and then he logged in Russia. Probably not a good thing, okay? But it can look for much more than that on the network. Physical security, like I said, we just use card access to protect important doors around campus. So all the students have card swipe access into the dorms and into the wings of their dorms so that they can't get into other parts of the building where they don't need to be. But once again, the physical security stuff is not heavily reliant on IT at this point. So as far as procedures and policies and awareness, we do use KnowBe4 for our security awareness training and for our phishing testing. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm only able to phish certain divisions of our university. Other divisions of our university feel that the email system is not IT's and it's theirs, and they think it's a violation of their privacy for us to be able to phish them currently. So we are working on that to make sure that we can make that happen real soon. We did run a cybersecurity awareness month last fall. If you guys don't know, October is cybersecurity awareness month. And every week we did a different topic. And my student organization, they hosted a table we had swag for the kids, and they could sign up to win a T-shirt. They could take a quiz on their cybersecurity. We had a couple iPads set up with one of those websites that could tell you whether your password was secure or not. And they were like, how do we know this is good? You're good. You're fine. So we did that. And then we also did a follow-up talk every week for faculty and staff that wanted to come learn a little bit deeper about the topic. So we'll probably do that again this fall. We'd also do a monthly IT newsletter, and we always try to have a tidbit in there about security as well. Okay. And we also have our wiki on campus that has information for everybody to read. Earlier I talked about IT governance at our university. We do have 3 levels. Actually, it's 4 levels within our IT organization. We actually do a academic council for technology, where there's a bunch of professors and IT staff. They sit down and talk about ideas. And then we also have administrative, so that's the staff and administration. And then those ideas go to the advisory council for deliberations. And then eventually it's going to the IT executive council, which consists of our CIO and her leads. And then they decide on the priority and the legitimacy of the different projects and the ideas. And then if by chance it needs to go any further, there are some things that need to go up to the university cabinet to be approved before it gets implemented on campus, especially when it comes down to the policy level. So a lot of what I've talked about today, I hope, helps you from having a day like this. Are there any questions from you guys?
Why are you so angry?
I don't know why. Well, who knows? Any questions? Comments? Anybody want to say anything about how they do so? Yes. We're going to get you the chat box.
Are you guys using Microsoft ATA for analytics at all?
We haven't started that yet, no. But there's a lot of things within our Office 365 and Azure subscription that we just registered for that are going to be able to help us with those types of things. But no, we have not ventured into that yet.
So my next question is, you guys had someone come in and do a threat assessment in your organization?
We're getting ready to.
getting
We
ready
just
to, okay.
the PO was just cut. We haven't started the interaction yet.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, we just did that probably like a couple of months ago, and they also helped us with protecting against lateral movements across our organization,
Okay.
which unfortunately includes Mac. So we have to make sure we shore those up too. So
Exactly. Yeah. Just to give you a little bit of a quick tidbit of information about that gap assessment or that penetration test. We're looking for the organization that we brought in to help us implement the NIST cybersecurity framework. The NIST cybersecurity. There are some other ones out there. The CI security benchmarks is another one. SANS has their controls. It just depends which one you want to go with. But we're going to try to implement the NIST cybersecurity framework.
I have 2 questions
Yes.
about Cisco ICE. We're implementing that right now, and just curious why you didn't use that for your student registration for res halls and stuff.
Because that at the time, so let me step back. We're going to use it currently for the upcoming fall. We got rid of Impulse Connect, Secure Connect, and everybody's going to use ICE in the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the Macs and for ICE and stuff, like how did you end up like doing that as a trusted device because of 802.1x? Did you connect it through Jamf and make that a trusted thing in ICE?
We are currently right now, we still have to open up every device and get the MAC address to whitelist it and put it in the Jamf, and then things take control. So we haven't done anything with 802.11x yet. Hopefully we will once the new ICE is implemented.
You just don't have everything in Jamf yet?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yep. Anything else?
You mentioned that the physical security layer isn't in your purview at this time yet. That seems awfully important piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been a conversation or an exploration to bring some of that in-house? You know, for instance, I see some of these organizations where the cards that they're using are, you know, the old HID cards that have been compromised for 15 years, and that's what your physical security is. What is, at least in your example, what is IT's role in that physical security conversation?
IT's role for us is only, we run the Seaboard system that controls our door access, and it's all card swipe. It's not even HID. But as far as, we're only in charge of the Seaboard side of it, assigning access and stuff like that. Facilities and our police department, actual security, does the other parts of security on campus. Anything else? All right. Oh, one more.
What's your password change policy? How many days do you have it?
Okay, so the question is, what is our password change policy at Millersville? Right now, it's 180 days. Unfortunately, that was dictated by the faculty because they didn't want to have to change their password more frequently or have it expire when they're not on campus. So we figure if we did it every 6 months, it's definitely going to fall within the time span when they're going to be on campus. Because otherwise, then they have to go through the help desk to get a password change or make sure they got their password security questions right in the portal. So it ends up being a hassle. All right. Well, then I'd like to say thank you. And if you guys have any other questions or want to contact me, my information is on the slide. There are a couple links at the end that helped me produce this information. So if you want to read up any further, be my guest. And thanks for joining us.